Today we have Heather Colvin. Heather is a senior technical recruiter at Smart Data, a IT staffing firm, and a huge LinkedIn presence, conference circuit goer, fellow hype person. I'm stoked to have this conversation.
I'm a hype lady. It's my thing.
I love bringing online friendships to real life.
Like, once you've met people in real life, you understand the value of showing up to these events. We forget that, like, before the internet, people had to fill rooms. Even a room of 50 people can go inspire and do so much. Really creating those real connections in person, it just changes things.
That's the whole point of my media company right now is like I'm on a mission to uplift and upskill the industry. Like I'm doing this for other people and I'm also learning and making friends along the way. If you focus on the human on the other side of the conversation, like it'll work. Recruiters, do you know those moments where you're juggling 15 roles, 10 hiring managers, and 3 different outreach tools, and you just think, there's gotta be a better way to do this? That's where Grayscale comes in. It's an AI assistant built for recruiters, not just another generic chatbot. Grayscale lives inside your ATS, whether it's Greenhouse, Workday, or SAP, and it automates candidate updates, reminders, and outreach across text, WhatsApp, and chat. I've seen teams use it, cut time to fill by 30%, and cut ghosting in half without losing the human touch. Because this isn't about replacing recruiters, it's about freeing them up to do the stuff that actually matters, closing great candidates. So if you're building a real talent machine, check out grayscaleapp.com and tell them Building the Talent Machine sent you. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Today we have Heather Colvin. Heather is a senior technical recruiter at Smart Data, a IT staffing firm, and a huge LinkedIn presence, conference circuit goer, fellow hype person. I'm stoked to have this conversation. Heather, what's up?
Hey. Yes. Oh my gosh. Great intro. Fellow hype. Yeah. I'm a hype lady. It's my thing. I love that you called that out because it's just the energy that I bring. It's also like recently I've been unintentionally having been closers on a few things. So I'm like, am I meant to be the closing? To stuff. And so, yeah, excited to be here with you, Brandon, and just hang out.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. We saw each other a few weeks back at RecFest, which is amazing. I love bringing online friendships to real life. And that's something that I see you as a beacon for other women in the space. So yeah, like how was conference season for you?
Oh my gosh. So RecFest, of course, the interesting part to RecFest is my friend Tabitha Kavanaugh. Her and I, we built a friendship, from LinkedIn. Like that's how we originally connected. And she's just become my best friend. And we decided that RecFest, because of where we live, she's in Pennsylvania, I'm here down here in Louisville, Kentucky area, that we would make that a point of our friendship to go once a year. So we at least saw each other physically once a year. And then we also get to do the corporate side of what we love and meeting the rest of our folks. And so anyhow, so with RecFest, it not only gives me an opportunity to hang out with her, but to meet everyone. And like you said, it's really creating those real connections in person. It just changes things. Like once you've met people in real life, you understand the value of showing up to these events.
It's so true. Spent the pandemic and post pandemic, like recruiting 12, 15-hour days in my basement, solo, doing those monster days where you're talking to 10, 15 candidates at a time, day in, day out, sleuthing the internet, getting those emails sent. So for me, when I finally came up for air, it was by being able to do this, like, hey, let's have that networking call. I see the work you're putting in. I see the content you're putting it out, and I want to be friends. Like, I'm a friends first type of guy. And I think that's the beauty of these events. And the slowdown in hiring is the silver lining is we get to go hang out with other recruiters versus just being heads down working the recs. Because the reality is I didn't have time for networking when I had to prioritize a candidate call over maybe that random first intro from somebody you've been chilling with on LinkedIn for 6 months.
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting. I think we've all, if you've decided to really build yourself in this space, like to build not just a brand, let's say you're sitting at an organization and you're wanting to drive that brand awareness for them, but to build it for yourself. And we've all had times where we've been siloed into just doing both things, learning, networking, and trying to make sure that we maintain success in our roles. So there was a period where like I wasn't, I think, as visible as I'm able to be today. And it's simply because once you break free and you start making those connections with others, they start showing up for you as well. So they'll start tagging you. So there's that like nice add-on too. And so I was in the trenches for a while, and it takes time to build brand presence. I mean, the reason you and I are here today is because I spent that time alone for so long until someone says, "Hey, I like Heather. Heather's great. You should have a conversation with her." And it leads to the next conversation, next conversation. Next thing you know, you're having a conversation with Brandon Jeff. So so this is how, it gets here. And so um I just I hope people understand when they see us up here and they see us in this position, that there was a long time where it was just ourselves, our own belief that we had value, that we had something to share, to give, and that eventually one day we were going to be able to um, spread ourselves, into this community and become leaders and help guide others to end up where we are today. So yeah.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your perspective and your outlook, your courage and bravery to put yourself out there. I think a lot of people exist on LinkedIn that are still lurkers. It takes a lot of courage to press post, especially when it comes to doing thought leadership. If you're a recruiter or an HR rep and you've got some ideas, like to put your ideas into a couple hundred characters and press post to the world takes a tremendous amount of bravery. And I think a lot of people can build their confidence through conviction, through storytelling. The way I see the evolution of LinkedIn now is you can use storytelling as a way to grow credibility. Whereas I feel like a few years ago, you had to really do thought leadership and say something novel and be willing to have 10 people in the industry who were somebody tell you that you were wrong and you look stupid. And now it's like, hey, go out there and figure out new creative ways to get your personal brand out there. And I'm excited for this next generation of recruiters because I'm looking forward to passing that torch in the same way that the torch has been quickly passed to me by folks that I thought were scary or intimidating. Like, did you ever see Steve Levy before you met him? Like, that dude looks like Sons of Anarchy. He's scary as hell. So the first time that somebody introed me to Steve and he's like in my DMs cold calling me, I'm like, holy hell, Steve Levy's calling me. So yeah, I so appreciate your perspective, Heather.
Well, it's a great point. I remember the first time Steve and I connected, just because he's such a take action person. Like, if you're gonna connect with Steve, you better be ready to like become somebody, because he's gonna champion you to like really reach your level of potential. So that, I think it's that part of meeting people in real life, or just getting the opportunity to meet them over the phone, that you really get to understand like who they are when they show up and how you can best serve them and support them, as well as they're going to turn around and do the same for you. And so, my biggest thing when I meet people, especially in real life, is I have to like let people know I'm only 5 foot. Like, I'm very, I'm not a tall woman. I think my tone and how I show up can make it sound like I'm, 5'7" at least. And so it's always interesting for me when I meet people and they're like really tall. Like, I don't expect that. It's such a difference in energy to consume. And so I have to like prepare myself for like that part of meeting people. But back to what you said about the just kind of the progression of LinkedIn, I feel like over the last 5 years, because that's really kind of when all the like before the last 5 years, there wasn't that many people who had 100,000 followers. That was like almost unheard of. And now we're seeing it all over the place. And so, I'm not big in storytelling. It's not something that I feel is a strength of mine. I mean, other people may feel differently. I'm very much a fact. I like to give facts. I speak very direct. And that typically is how my content is, except for I will utilize ChatGPT to help me soften it up in a more storytelling telling fashion, because it's not my natural approach. But my favorite thing to do, and it's always been, is I'm actually more of the lurker, like what you mentioned. Like, I still love to lurk. I love to leave comments. Like, that's just I get more impressions sometimes on my comments than I do on my posts. And so I love the fact that they added that in the comment side, where you can see the impressions on the comments, because it actually gives me kind of like a boost to know that my comments are landing on so many eyes.
Oh, yeah, and that's what's interesting too about the platform is I haven't seen yet any sort of analytics dashboard that tells you, Heather, like, "Hey, you've got
Right.
a million impressions this year over the last 365 days for your posts, but then you got, 1.5 million for your comments. And I don't think we've triangulated
Yes, where
yet.
is it?
I know. And we haven't quite seen how the comment impressions relate to post impressions. I haven't seen any analysis from like those LinkedIn hacker gurus that are always telling you about the changing algorithm. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't
Right?
think about that stuff. Just like put out good
Well,
content. I try to make my friends laugh. And
yeah.
like, if it works, it works. That's like my whole MO. Like, I don't have a playbook. I just post what I want to post.
Yeah, I love that because, it's interesting, like, when I met Adam Posner a couple years ago in real life at VCon of all places, he gave a shout out then that Heather leaves the best comments. And at the time, I was just now really growing and like I hadn't met like Steve or Brian Fink or even Tabitha, like her and I weren't friends yet at that time. That was the really kind of moment that I realized how valuable comments are because that's how he originally knew me. And so I encourage people all the time to post comments because if it wasn't for being intentional there, I don't know if I'd be sitting right here right now. So,
Yeah, and it's a delicate balance. I think you have to find the right way to communicate with authenticity. That's what cuts through
mhm,
the noise because like right now it's so easy to spot somebody that has like a comment bot. But
right.
if you can drop informed perspective with personality, that's what's going to drive traffic and engagement on your own pages and your own posts because you blew up. You've got like 35,000 followers. That's a lot of human beings that could potentially see your thoughts each day. That's like bigger than Madison Square Garden. And
Right.
that's what I always tell myself if I do look at like engagement on a post where it's like the emotional difference between 700 impressions and clearing 1,000 impressions is far larger than if I have 1,000 impressions or 10,000 impressions. It's just so silly. But the
Yeah.
reality is, if those 700 impressions on a post in 24 hours, if that's like 100 people, that's 100 people that if they showed up at my doorbell, like right now today, that would be overwhelming. So we have to
Yes.
put this stuff into context.
You and I are on the same wavelength, which like we haven't had a time to I swear.
I see you, bro.
I I tell people this all like I think we forget that like before the internet, people had to fill rooms. And like if you had to fill a room with the amount of expectation you have in impressions and followers and people showing up for you, like we just really need to take that into scope. And so it's like if I had just let's say I did an event and only 100 people, and I say only, only 100 people came in and watched it virtual. How would I feel if that was 100 people in a room? So it's like we got to remember what the real visual is. We can't
Yeah.
let the digital visual change how real impactful what we're doing can be. I mean, even a room of 50 people can go and change so much, can go inspire and do so much. So,
Preach queen.
yeah.
Come on. Like that's exactly what I need to hear today. That's exactly the kind of stuff that I like to tell people. A lot of folks hit me up. They're like, "Oh, like what's your camera? What's your, microphone, whatever." It's just like, I don't know, just like do
Yeah.
whatever. Like start with what you got. And if you focus on the human on the other side of the conversation, like it'll work.
Well, you know what? One story I think about often when because I think if you choose to show up virtually, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's on X, whether you're doing a YouTube channel, you do get caught up in the numbers. And so, one story I think about often when it comes to the power of one, just one influence, is I follow Ed Milet, and his story is that his dad was an alcoholic, and his dad had a sponsor that taught his dad like the power of just one more day. And he said that guy did not know that my dad was my dad and that he was raising Ed Milet. And that power of that one more day strategy that guy taught Ed Milet's dad is what made Ed who he is today. So it was just that one interaction, that one moment of influence, just one person. And I think about that. You only need that one. And like we think we need 100,000, we need 10,000. We just need one. And one person in our audience could be the next Ed Milet of the future. And so I always think about that and to just re-humble myself when I do get caught up in the numbers. So,
One of my mantras is the world is a lot smaller than we think. And I put this on
yes.
slide 3 in any talk I do, whether it's in person or webinar. because that's what recruiting has taught me. There's far too much serendipity and coincidence. And I just think there's so much interconnectivity. And then that's the whole point of my media company right now is like I'm on a mission to uplift and upskill the industry. Like I'm doing this for other people and I'm also learning and making friends along the way. But when I have
Yeah.
that clarity of like, why am I doing this? Like I would love to have a body of work that I can look back on 10 years from now and be really proud of it because it provided somebody with skills and tools and resourcing to up level themselves and have financial security because a recruiter did that for me. There were people when I got into tech recruiting that put out information that helps me just do my job, not get fired, make money, pay my bills.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. Like sometimes we get caught up in this world of tech or world of LinkedIn. The reality is recruiting is super humble work. And like I'm a blue collar baddie turned startup jobs daddy. And I know a day's work and I'm not afraid of it. But I think sometimes we insulate ourselves online or in the world of tech that just to me reeks of entitlement.
Yeah, well, and it's why it's important to get back to the showing up in person and having that level of influence too, because energy, vibes, like all those things matter. That's actually, I feel like, what pours the cup of the human is that level of energy because we can feel it. And so, like when you and I mean, just that when we hung out at RecFest, I mean, I literally walked away like my cup just overflowing with just excitement, energy, ready to I had to I ended up having like 3 a.m. thoughts that I had to throw in ChatGPT and create this content stuff from. It's just like I miss because I work remote. I think you do you're primarily remote too, right? Most of the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
And
I'm just
so
out here with
our
all the guys
create
that live in my head and, driving myself
right,
nuts.
right. And they're fun to hang out with. I got them too, but they have restrictions as well in their creativity, and so I do rely on external factors to give me new ideas, new thoughts. That's probably why I live in the comments section. Really, is because it really feeds into the fact I don't have someone sitting next to me, and I'm getting to have that outside my own narrative discussion. So the comments give me that discussion.
And then just to draw it back to comment-led growth, this is actually a thing. There's a Forbes article, July 2nd,
I love that.
2025. Mr. LinkedIn with comment-led growth without even posting. That's a real thing. I've talked about it. I think a lot of people share
Yeah.
your experience where it's a low barrier to entry to put yourself out there and take that risk of embarrassing yourself. I just have
Hmm.
no filter. I have no problem embarrassing myself in public. And like my
Yeah.
whole persona, which you probably pick up on, is like my whole persona is like the annoying nephew. Like I love this dynamic of just kind of messing with people and it's
Yeah.
a little broy. I've been called out. I have a lot of female friends in this space that if I've said something in the past, sometimes they're like, dude, you sounded like a total bro today. But because they know me, they feel comfortable enough calling me out on that. And it's funny because, like, literally the first time I met Steve Levy in person, he put me in a headlock. And then I'm also not a big dude. I'm like 5'9", 150 pounds. I'm a cyclist. Like, I'm scrawny. So when I like roll up on Joel Cheeseman and I've been talking smack like as a joke to Joel for 6 months, and then I see him in
Yeah.
real life and I'm like throwing shade at him in person, like it's funny because like I'm that little annoying guy compared to 6'5", Joel Cheeseman or whatever. And
Yeah.
you've got to just find authenticity. Like I annoy the shit out of myself when I do this sometimes, but that's just the persona I've adopted. And what I've received is positive feedback. And I love writing. I love satire. I'm not a super sarcastic person, but I love this
Yeah.
idea of like, can you say something that gets people to lean in and drop a nugget of truth and allow them to go off and think on their own?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's, I'm a super fan of you, of what you're doing. Like it's really I guide people to your stuff all the time because it's different. I don't know if you know how different your stuff is. And so like I'm excited for like 5 years from now because if you like I just when you've sat back and you've watched this and of course I can't say you've watched this enough. I'm not even a decader yet, not even on LinkedIn. I've only been on LinkedIn since I became into the recruiting space because that was the first time I even knew about LinkedIn was when I got laid off and I landed a job as a recruiting coordinator and then I learned LinkedIn was a thing. And so anyway, but in that, I've watched the evolution of content grow on LinkedIn. And I think that's really about the time that I know it's been around for a while and maybe it had a run before then, but like even then there wasn't that many people creating. So it's only been in the last like 3 or 4 years, maybe 2020, because of everyone being remote, that we really have seen the scalability of it. And so I've seen so many forms of people wanting to be content influencers, and you're definitely probably my favorite. If I had to be and it's not even because I'm on here, it's like I don't think you know how like really great what you're creating is. And so it's exciting.
Thank you.
It's one of the few that I enjoy to stop and watch. And so if yeah, I really do. Like I will stop what I'm doing to see what you created. It's an art that I can appreciate. So
I'm blown away. Like, there's like 10 too many compliments in there, but let's
sorry.
like remove me from it
Yeah.
and roll the tape back. So we got the newsfeed in late 2014. Like that's when newsfeed happened on LinkedIn. And you're right. There was a whole like V1 of creators out there that were like the resume writers, like Adam Karpiak, shit posting Workday like 10 years ago. So like when you see those Workday memes, I literally like it makes my skin crawl because it's like we were doing Workday memes 10 years ago, and it's really just know your meme. And so people say stuff on the internet that is regurgitated, but you really have to understand the context of the internet if you're going to participate in the internet. And the internet
Yeah.
is inherently a funny place. The problem is work is so serious, and we put on these masks of our professional identity. So then you have people showing up to the platform and they try to bring that professional identity into an algorithmic newsfeed product. And I see a lack of authenticity all the time because I know these people are dying to express themselves in ways that they're not comfortable because they think their boss might see it or what have you. The reality
Yeah.
is like I got my first job in corporate America because I was a millennial who knew how to use Facebook and I knew how to use LinkedIn. Like my first job was doing recruiting coordination and employer brand for a public company in a team of Gen X and boomers. And they said, here's a LinkedIn page, go do it. And for 7 years, I did like brand pages. And then one day I was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going mask off. I'm just going to be who I am to my friends online and communicate with everybody the way I communicate in real life and write for an audience of one, talk from that perspective. And the reality has completely blown me away because what you just shared with me is why I want to keep doing this so that other people can take that leap. Like the reality is I work for myself. Like I quit my job. Like I used to be a recruiter at a company and now I do this and will recruit for companies as a solo recruiter. That's a huge leap of faith. And that's because of LinkedIn. That's because of the community. I think the ability to put on for other people is huge. And we need to have that spirit of generosity. And that's something that I see you doing. So tell me a little bit about like how you're thinking about your community. You mentioned Tab earlier, but like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So, I like to do, I think behind the scenes connecting. Anytime that when I get to know people, like when we meet in real life, or if I get an opportunity to meet one on one virtually or over the phone, I'm thinking about how can I serve you after we get out of this conversation? Who can I connect you to? Or if you're ever in need of an opportunity. So sometimes, people in our space, they end up part of this market and they unfortunately end up laid off. And so I also like to connect and send because I'm on LinkedIn all day. So I see job opportunities, they pop up for me like, here's a recommendation. If I'm not looking, but I know who is, I try to serve that way. I'd say right now I'm actually in a season of realignment. So because my original when I first joined LinkedIn in 2000 in end of 2018, my goal at the time was just to become like I had zero connections and I had none of my friends in my community had LinkedIn. So I didn't even have like someone to be like, this is what it is. Let's be like I had nothing. So my goal at that time was just to build a value in myself that would make people interested in me. And then once I built that value, my goal was how do I become known to where people I used to love seeing people get shot like like here's who you need to know. I'm like, how do I become one of those people? Like I want to be part of the list. And so then I started to become a part of the list. And I need to I haven't done one of those in so long because there's so many like now once you know a lot of folks, there's like that list is so long now. There are so many great people on LinkedIn to get connected to follow. Like it's just too long. Like that's why I don't even I probably don't do them anymore. And then additionally, then I saw people getting on stage, and I remember asking Adam Posner from the podcast. I remember reaching out to him and saying, like, "You're at all these events. How are you at all these events?" And he goes, "Heather, you need to build a value in yourself that gets people to invite you to be on stage." And I
Yeah.
was like, on it. So then I started doing that. And so I think for me, when it comes to community and how I can serve, is to continue to build a pathway of progress and remember every stage of who Heather was and never forget. So when I meet people, no matter what stage they're at, whether they're starting off, whether they're building a presence on LinkedIn, whether they want to get to virtual events, on stage events, whatever that is, or they're in the job market, like keeping those skills fresh. I keep my skills fresh as if I was a job seeker, just so
Mhm.
I can always serve the folks that I'm connected to, or even people that I get newly connected to. So that's kind of how I approach it. Is I don't know, it's a lot, but it's the best way that I make sure that my main goal in life is just to, because I'm faith based, is to live a life with intention to serve others. And
Love it.
so however that looks, that's kinda how I show up.
And it's real. Like it oozes out of your ears
Yeah.
when people are in your presence, Heather. And to me, that's what's exciting about recruiting. There's so many
Yeah.
boring ways to make a living. And this is like
Right.
really fun. That's why I love some of these
So fun.
events. That's why RecFest was
Yeah.
such a blast for me because it was literally like every single one of my friends from the internet, minus a few people who didn't go. But I
Yeah.
got to see that magic of a few people that I have known, but haven't quite seen it. And one person
Yeah.
I'll call out in particular who is gonna, this is an public invitation to the show, Nico Sombrio. I don't know if you know Nico, and
I don't think so.
great
I
takes
need an intro.
online. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got you on the intro. Nico, like you and Heather are homies now. She has
Let's
so
go.
much energy. And I just like did a man on the street with her. And I was like, who is this
Yes.
person? Like they were so good, so engaging. And it just reminds me that like recruiters are the best folks on earth. I love
Yes.
the mission that we serve, which is to work with great clients, but getting people jobs. Candidates put
Yeah.
so much trust in us when they make such a big decision for their life. And I've yet to meet a recruiter that I've built a relationship with that sticks around, that doesn't use that candidate relationship as the North Star.
Yeah. Well, just a relationship in general, just being a good friend to people. We all need people around us that'll serve, support, whatever way they can. I mean, it really what makes you feel, when especially if you're in a season of life where you're like, you look around and you're like, who's here for me? We're here for you for sure. So that's why this year so back to like community serving, and just helping others and elevation of that is I decided at RecFest this year that I wanted to take pictures, my selfie thing that I do. I wanted to take it with as many people that I've never met rather than with my
Nice.
friends, with people I haven't met because I remember the Heather me that no one knew. And I was like, I wish someone would just shout me out. I wish someone would say they met me and was excited about it. So I wanted to meet as many people I've never met so I could post about meeting them, after the event. And I'll continue to do that at every event. Like who else can I, because how many people would love to have a picture on LinkedIn, but maybe they're not bold enough to post it themselves. But if they're at an event and I take a picture with them, there they are. There you were. We were hanging out. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
it's so true. Like, I don't know, like if I could magic wand all of this and look back in 10 years, maybe like I would love to be one of those people that just like posts like random platitudes like employer brand is your candidate experience. And then like 15,000 people like it, or just be like, go look at these 5 followers and just like completely blow somebody up, like in a good way, like put them on.
Yes. Yes.
Because, like, I
Well,
think platform for good and, like, providing forum for other people, like, that's why even I do this is 'cause, like, I just wanna hear people's cool stories, like, tell me what you've been working on.
yeah, if I could ever figure out how to do like have a camera that, and I'm sure it's simple. I just that follows me because I even though I get super nervous to approach people I don't know, I still do it because I know life is a one-time experience and I don't want my nerves and my fear to change my opportunity. And so I've always wanted, we have a walking bridge here that I used to actually, when I worked near it, I would run it every day and I met a lot of people, great people doing that. But I always wanted to walk and just interview random people. Like just, even go around and ask, like, do you know what LinkedIn is? Like, because everyone thinks that everyone knows what it is, but I'm telling you, in this small town that I live in, 1,000 people, I bet there's only like 20 that have a LinkedIn profile. And
Yeah.
so, it reminds you to build offline because the
Yes.
community isn't all here, all on LinkedIn. And
And the
so,
reality, that's like
anyway,
where that's how the economy functions. Like the majority of
right.
jobs that are worked are not found online. Like just straight up.
It
Like
yeah. I mean, and I'm fortunate that I hire tech, and tech shows up online. That's just what they do. And so, but if you're hiring, in an industrial type of recruiting position, your folks probably aren't on LinkedIn. I Most of my friends who are electricians, they do not have a LinkedIn. I mean, they
no,
barely get on Facebook, let alone have a
exactly.
LinkedIn. So, I've been blessed that with building myself on LinkedIn, it's also helps me in my career. But there's a lot of folks out there that LinkedIn only serves the brand building, but not necessarily the job function. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like I have hired machine operators, materials handlers, like warehouse folks, distribution center type roles, like truck drivers, temporary workers, like all stuff where there's no digital profile.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I think the
Yeah. So,
recruiter of the future, like if you can source somebody who doesn't exist online, like you're a real recruiter.
yeah, I mean, well, that's the way. Again, I'm not even a decader yet, but from my observation, that's what the way it was. And so, like an example, let's say you and I went to a food festival. Like we could literally set up and just ask people, if you had to look for a job today, where would you go? Just to see the average person's go choice when it comes to finding a job. And so, like
Yeah.
that's kind of like stuff I sit at home and I think about. Like, I wonder if I went to an event and did that, like how many people would say LinkedIn or Indeed, or they'd say they don't even know where to go. Because when I was laid off from the job I was at for 11 years back in 2018, I hadn't even made a resume since I was 19. Like I had not. So I actually was like, do I get on Career Builder? I had no clue where to go. And so I
Yeah.
always think about her and how many people are like me that is still are out there. So,
Yeah, I love that you said
yeah.
that. I've got this idea for a show that I wanna do. I spent a lot of time in Vegas for a person who is not a Vegas person, and I wanna do a
Yeah.
show called The Shallow End, where
Ah.
I, like, literally interview people in a Vegas party pool in the middle of, like, a freaking show that are just, like, getting rowdy, where I'm just like, "What's your worst job ever?" And you get, like, a bunch of drunk people just be like, "Oh, I hated this job. It sucked. Go Vegas."
Right. A bunch of honesty. That's what you get there.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to sponsor The Shallow End,
I love
I'll be
it.
out in the pool, like, holding the microphone cable above my head, just, like, make it look, like, stupid. God, see, this is the stuff I'm talking about, like, I annoy the shit out of myself.
Well, but you never know what idea is the big one. So like my mother's my go-to. I tell you, I own probably 30 like domains because every time I have
Oh,
an
tell me
idea,
more.
I go buy a domain. And so like one of my most recent ideas, which is I do plan to execute on, so I'll talk about it, is my passion in life is to run a youth sports fundamental program on mental health and neuroperformance. And so the baseball on my name is because my niche thing that I train is baseball and softball.
Dope.
And
Okay. I
so, but
was gonna ask
my
you about that.
my domain that I bought to yeah, my domain that I bought that I'm gonna run my program on, I just came up with the name probably like 6 plus months ago. I've been praying on it, like trying to figure it out. I mean, I've had this idea to run this program for years, but never found a name. And it finally hit me. It's called The Other 99 Athletes. So my goal is to focus on the 99%, not the top 1%. I don't want to train what's considered like the 1% talent. I simply want to run a program that for people who sign their kids up to learn what sports truly do teach you, that I teach the mindset framework that comes from that development.
Love that.
So,
Tell me more.
yeah. Yeah. So I was an athlete, what it would be considered like, I guess, gifted. Like I naturally am athletic. And so when I was growing up and I was in trainings, everyone only focused on my physical development. No one ever checked in mentally. So even though like I was getting MVP all the time, I was always recognized. For my skills, no one ever checked in to see how I felt. So even though I was up there getting the MVP award, I never felt like a winner. And so what ultimately happened, even though I had full rides to college to play, I ended up turning it down because I was mentally checked out. Like I was so far gone from understanding the value that I brought in anything. And so after a few years of that regret of not taking action on that original dream that I had, it took me actually until my son started playing. I wouldn't even step on a field until then. So when he started to play, I decided I was going to start coaching. And that's when I found my passion again. That's when I realized, because my goal, even when I was younger, was always to coach. So when I went to these specialized trainings and stuff, I always went in with the mindset that I was going to learn how to train later. So I always absorb differently than everyone
Mm,
else, and my brain and my eyes are meant to do it. So anyway, so I did a lot of self reflection. How did someone like myself? Because there's another backstory. Like the environment that I came from to the person I am today is just that's a conversation in itself. My sister and I actually talk about this often. Like, how did we get out? How did we become successful? How did we change when most of our friends did not? And so anyway, so I did reflection. How did someone with my giftedness, how my talent end up
mm,
not doing anything? And so that's when I found that throughout that time, that season, the one thing that was never really cultivated and nourished was my mindset. Like, none of
okay.
my coaches did it. So they would come up and be like, "Wow, you have a cannon for an arm," because I was a catcher. And it was always about my physical. And so I just learned that if I wonder who Heather would have been if my mental had been, if that would have been something I was trained on. And so, like, one example I give, I learned this actually, and I do a lot of reading on mindset and stuff, but Layla Hermosi, I listened to one podcast of hers, and she gave a really great example. It was, most of us don't rise to our level of expectation, we rise to our level of preparation. And so when I see athletes who have a passionate, like, they're very passionate but they're angry because they're not performing well, they're having a negative attitude, it's because no one's checked in that their expectations here but their preparations here. And until preparation meets their expectation, they're going to always have that disruption of anger. Like, why am I not doing well? Why am I not performing? Because your preparation doesn't match. So we got to get that in alignment, and then you'll see the results that you're expecting from yourself. So yeah, sorry, I could keep going.
I would love you to keep going. This is amazing. I just think that like the power of mindset is huge. And I've been a big proponent of like the phrase, take what you need, leave the rest. Like leave somebody's
Mhm.
personality out of your judgment. There's so much information that floods us through newsletters, through media, through news feeds. There's
Yeah.
such great motivation and inspiration out there, and you never know where it comes from. So if you can like leave
Yeah.
your first impression of somebody out of it and be like, what are they actually saying? Like, what is the words? What are the transcripts? There's so much beauty in having a growth mindset. And that's something that I am grateful for every day because not everybody has a growth set mindset. And when it comes to self improvement and curiosity, like those are power skills of recruiters. Like you've got to be
Yes.
a perpetual optimist, knowing that the next great candidate is one phone call away.
100, yes. I mean, whether it's candidate, whether you're in sales, right? Everything's one action away from a win. Everything. And so, like, you're one action away from a win and just getting up and choosing to go for a walk. That's a win on just self-care. You're one action away from making that phone call to get that candidate that you weren't able to get a hold of on LinkedIn, but you have a tool that gives you their phone number and you decided to take action to give them a call. I mean, I have one candidate that's interviewing today from a cold call, never responded to me on any other form. And I finally was like, yo, I remember when I talked to him, he said, when I looked at the phone, I thought, who's calling me from Indiana? And or his wife had said that. And so he picked it up. And I said, well, go you on having the confidence to pick up a number you didn't know, which I usually call out when people do pick up. I'm like, look at you picking up a number you don't know. By the way, this is Heather. I'm a senior technical recruiter. And so, because I always like to call that out anyway, because I don't pick, if you call me and I don't have you programmed, I will not pick up. Like, I get so
Yeah.
much, And so when my candidates do it, or if I'm doing business development, I immediately call that out. Like, go you for picking up this number. By the way, I'm Heather Colvin.
I love it. I love it's I forget there's like it's not Lasso, but there's another similar Ted Lasso character that that guy plays, and there's like a joke where it's like, how much does a polar bear weigh? Enough to break the ice. Hey, I'm so and so. And it's just like you strike me as like such a corny, cheesy intro person that it's like so
Oh, yeah.
endearing when you could just like drop in a nugget and then be like, oh, by the way, I'm Heather.
Oh, yeah. Or let's say, like, I fumble. Like, if I fumble when I do a cold call, whether you pick up or it's voicemail, I'll be like, look, tell me you're not AI without telling me you're not AI. Because AI is not going to fumble, right? And so that usually makes people laugh. Or if I'm calling a number and but there's no voice note. I mean, we call these numbers. Nobody has voice notes anymore to tell me who you are. So I'll just be like, hey, this is Heather Colvin trying to get hold of Brandon. I don't know if this is Brandon. If this is Brandon, great. If this isn't Brandon, feel free to listen to this message. And then I give my message and I go, hey, Brandon or not, hope you have a blessed day and we get a chance to talk. So, like
Don't underestimate the
that's
power of a perfect non sequitur.
right. Yes. So I don't know. I just got into a point where when I first got into this space, I went off the scripts. I read the stuff and I think the scripts are great for like you to build yourself. But eventually there's a point where your personality steps in and you got to get confident enough to just show up imperfect. And so I actually prefer in an AI world, we almost need to be imperfect just to be verified that we are human. And so if
Yeah.
I'm exact, you're not going to know. If I sound robotic when I call, you're going to assume already that I'm an AI bot to begin with, and you're going to hang up. But if I call and I'm like, oh, well, look at you, you're going to be like, whoa, this is a person. I want to listen. So,
I
yeah.
want to go back to this idea of friendship, the role of content, comment-led growth, friendship, and all of that. I'm like a pretty transparent dude. That's how I've been, like straight out the gate, especially with this content creation and like making friends with other creators. The funny thing is, like, if you're a creator in the space, like you're probably friends with everybody else. Like anybody you
Oh,
see
yeah.
online, like is in my text threads. I send them personalized voice notes and videos to make them laugh. So like if you're a vendor listening, spoiler alert, we're all friends. That said, one on one, like I'll tell anybody my numbers that they want. If they want data, if they want like how to close a deal with a client, if they want a referral. Like I'm usually very transparent in a one-on-one conversation with people because I want to uplift all of us. And
Yeah.
when it comes to that content, I want to call out a post because you said something earlier about friendship and we've talked about that. I had a post last week that literally was just simple. It was like the best part of recruiting, if you do it long enough, is that you find out who your friends are.
Hmm.
And it's 8,500 impressions, whatever, 122 people engaged, 62 comments. So pretty good engagement rate. But some dude said, I'm sorry I'm missing the point. You're a recruiter. People want jobs from you. Friends are either at your employer or via your home life. I wouldn't expect a job prospect to become a friend. I must be lacking coffee. I think he might be lacking coffee, but like this is just a great reminder that there's no one right way to live. I love that my friends as a 38-year-old man have been people I've met on the internet in recruiting because I've been a team of one. I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but like sometimes like working remote, it can be a lonely place and
Oh, so
it's not always
lonely.
easy to make friends in your 30s. So for me to have
No.
like a handful of real friendships like, that is so beautiful to me because we're literally just recruiters talking content in the comments, and now we give each other hugs. Like, Brian
Yes.
Fink was a source of support through my divorce. I met Brian online. Like, he is a true friend and mentor. We just happen to share the same job title. And I'm so grateful that there are people out there that exist like that. We could do like a whole freaking episode on just how great Brian Fink is.
Oh, yes. He's so intentional about being a good friend. I mean, he really sets the bar on that. Like because of Brian, like he was my first real friend that actually chose to send random messages just to say like, "Hey, you're great. Have a great day." So I started doing that. And like I knew to do it before Brian, but it was Brian's actions, consistent actions of show it almost like I think we underestimate the value of habits that people can instill in us by consistently showing up with it. So an example being now outside of Brian's text messages where he'll just tell you have a great day, you're a great person, just sending you those reminders. My friend Tabitha, she usually says a lot when her and I are talking, like that's a post, Heather, that's a post. Once she knows that I struggle with being a content creator because I'm more of a commenter,
Mm.
she'll say that's a post. So now I think like that though. So one habit that I've invested, like she does, that I do, is if someone talks about you positively when you're not in the room, I'll text you and tell you because I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
important for you to know about that. That like, hey, you were
Same.
talked about in a positive way, and so she's doing that too. So I just think we underestimate like when we have these friends and their little habits and what makes them unique, how we adopt it too. And next, we're just this massive community of support and us, showing up for each other and guiding. And but to the comment that you mentioned, I think it comes down to how do you define friend. Friend could be someone that you can lean on when you're going through a challenging situation like a divorce, or a friend can simply be someone that when you need a job opportunity that you know that you can call on, you can reach out to them to, let you know what the market looks like, edit your resume. a friend could be someone that checks in with you to make sure you get up and you go to the gym. I got a friend like that. Like we literally check in on that. So, to what he said, like, people like we're a recruiter, they're why would they, want to be friends or whatever that may be? They want to connect with us that way. And it's like, well, it's more than that. And so I tell anyone that has the opportunity to have an introduction call with me that out, and I know you probably, most of us who are truly here to serve and be community support, that you can reach out to me in 5 years. Like I am a forever point of contact for you that if I can help you, connect you, if you're a first connection with me on LinkedIn, me and you both, I'm sure we have a lot of first connections. And me being having been in business development, I have a lot of recruiters, a lot of hiring managers in my first connections because of that intention. If I can give you access to someone, an intro, don't hesitate to ask. I always say that.
100%. Yeah, same. And like I take all those intros all day long and I only
Mhm.
charge $250 for an intro call with a stranger.
See? I was like, am I missing what?
You should
What?
have seen your face. Oh man, I had to do that.
What?
You know why? You know why I said that? Because I like literally saw somebody on the internet who is a recruiter who like the link in bio is a $250 intro call or a
Really?
$79 intro call. It's like, yo, get out of here with that shit. Like, oh my
Well,
God, it's so tacky.
Well, I'm actually a nerd to like go in when people have packages that they offer. I do like to go in and see what people are charging out of just curiosity. I understand like time is valuable. Like I do get it. And like maybe you want to offer your time during like your family time. And so you might charge $50 for an hour of your time because it would interrupt your family time. And so to make it make sense and to still give people access to you, I could understand. But yeah, some of these charges out there, people, especially with ChatGPT, like really just invest in learning prompt engineering with ChatGPT. And most of these tools or people that you're paying for, you could
Yeah.
figure it out on your own. Like
Because they're
it's
using it anyway. Like, you don't need a resume writer, you don't need a
right,
career coach. Like, this is 2025. Like, let's be honest here. Like,
right.
just go make some friends and provide value to other people. Like,
Well, back to what you said. So my mother and I go back and forth because when I did the Ben Mena podcast or podcast, when I did the Ben Mena recruiting summit, it chose to do my full playbook, like how I start to finish recruit. And my mother was like, Heather, why do you give away how you win? And I heard a thing that was like, even if you tell people how to win, like literally maybe 5% will go do it. And so
yeah,
I'm like, no one's gonna go do it anyway, mom. Like
yeah.
maybe a few, but like who cares? And so back to what you were saying on that part of it is like when I was coming up as I'm sure same thing for you. There wasn't that many people telling you how to be successful, how to win. It's why now when I go on stage, like my point when anyone who wants to accept me to be on stage, I only want to go on there to give actionable content. I don't want to go on there to tell you how to be a great, and I think that's good information, great leader, how to have a great mindset. I love mindset, right? Like I want to coach a program on it. But when it comes to recruiting, I want to tell you how to win, how to be successful as an individual contributor, because I didn't have that. And I,
Mhm.
I want to be the voice of that. And I want to teach people. So when you walk away from my sessions, that you at least picked up at least one thing that you can take back, sit in your seat, and be better at your job. So it's a huge piece for me.
It's so funny. We are like two peas in a pod. Like, I'm really glad that
We,
we're friends, Heather, because so much
oh my
of
God.
your just operating and mental wavelength is exactly where I'm at. And I always tell people
Yes.
that too. Like, if I have the opportunity where I'm on stage, like I actually I'm a lifelong extrovert. I don't like being solo guy in front of a slide deck. I've figured out a
Yes.
way to do it and I templatize my slide decks so that they are like fully branded experiences so that I know like I'm very comfortable. I don't have to learn my deck. It's just like I'm
Yeah.
substituting new information, but it looks and feels the same because I want people to feel the brand of me. And there's
Yeah.
no greater compliment than when somebody's like, oh my God, you're exactly like you are online. This is great. Because
Yes.
that to me means it's authenticity. And then I can get out of my own way. The reality
Yeah.
is like we're all just human beings. So if I'm anxious, if I'm nervous, my armpits are sweating before I go on stage. Like that's just a human experience. But if
Right.
I can remove the ego and remove the physiology of what it's like to be a solo speaker on stage, which is scary as hell, I can just focus on the content and connecting with the audience. And like I'm very grateful that people like Jamie Leonard at RecFest, that people like Tim Sackett, people like Shannon Pritchett have put me on stages where I am
Yes.
going through a case study and bringing data and talking about the work that I've done because I just prefer to shine a light on other people. And if one person listens to our conversation, they're like, oh my God, I want to be like friends with Brandon and Heather, like, then great.
Yeah. Yeah, hit us up. No, but good point. By the way, I congratulations and,
Oh,
because
on
you're
the divorce?
speaking no, you're speaking, right? Or do you have an upcoming, like, right? Like, you
I
dropped that.
I did, yeah, I'm gonna release it because Tim was so gracious to record it, so I, like, literally watched the file, and I tend not to replay stuff because I don't wanna get, like, caught up in, like, nitpicking myself, like,
Yeah.
communication is just something that I'm trying to practice, but I actually listened to this one, and I didn't sound like an idiot, and, like, people told me I did a good job, and, like, I usually ignore compliments, but because that felt good and I felt practiced and I felt like, whoa,
Yeah.
this was actually coherent. Like 200 people in a room paid for this content. There's a level of accountability and responsibility I felt to deliver. And I did that.
Mhm.
And I had so much fun. But the funny part is, this was last week. I went to the bathroom before I went on stage, and like Tim Sackett in front of everybody, like announced me on stage, and our next speaker is, and like I wasn't there. I was like in the bathroom, and everybody's like looking around for me. So hella embarrassing,
Love
but
it. But
very
you
on
know what?
brand. But very on brand. Like,
There you go. And memorable, right? And so, like, it's a pattern disruptor, and not only is it memorable for you, but anyone who was there to experience it. But you know what I love that you said is that you wanted to bring, like, a real value because people were paying to be there. And that's how it was when I showed up for the Ben Mena Recruiting Summit is and why I built out my playbook because I knew that he had a cost part to it if you wanted to watch the replays, and I wanted to make sure I honored that part of his commitment, and that I would give something that potentially could encourage people to want to hit that pay to replay. And so I love the fact that you did like we're I swear two peas. Like we really I just think we have this we have similar hearts, but I don't think you realize like you're becoming that platform too. Like that people like me sitting here, there are people who are like, how do I get in Heather's seat? How do I get to meet Brandon? I don't know if you really
my number's
know.
720-646-9075. I can talk to 10
You
people next week. Let's go.
let's go. Y'all got it. Whoever, if you're watching this, you made it this far. If you don't take action, man, I might actually do it. I might just call just
No, seriously,
be like,
seriously. Like
I'll call again.
I want to talk to 100 people next quarter.
Let's do it. Yes. Well, you drop. I tell you what, you drop some content, and I'm gonna help push it out. So
Let's do it.
let's make it happen together. No, I'm over here. I'm about to take her. I'm like, well, Brandon.
Well, we should probably start the podcast at some point.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
Heather, you're like vibrating on this level that is uplifting and upskilling the recruiting world. So I'm really excited about that and like your future. But like, what are you working on like right now today that
Oh,
fills your cup from a recruiter standpoint? We've talked a lot about
s-
community, but like, what are the recs that you're working?
yeah. So, well, I guess I didn't share that up front. I work for a software consulting firm. We help hire for clients all throughout the U.S. What I love about where I work, Smart Data, is when I joined here 4 years ago. I told my director that the number one thing for me was I could not have a creative ceiling above me. I needed to have that unlimited, and to allow me to grow in whatever way that I wanted to. And he understood that I had aspirations to speak. He understood that I wanted to show up via content because I know some places, some people do sit in seats where the company regulates what they can post. And so I needed an environment that was going to support all aspects of Heather, no matter how ambitious, ridiculous, whatever that was, like let me be me and let me see what I can do because I'm very creative curious. And so I have to, for me to feel fulfilled, I have to be able to be curious within my creativity. And so to answer your question, my goal for 2026 and maybe 2027 is I want to get on more stages.
Mhm.
Even though it makes me like super nervous, I still want to do that because it's always been a vision in my mind, even before I became a recruiter, that I was meant to be on stages.
Oh, I love it.
So what I'm planning to launch in order to help hopefully ignite that is I've said it like 3 times, so I'll say it again. But what I did back at Ben Mena's summit, it was called prompt to placement, an AI recruiting playbook. So I'm actually going to create the playbook, like the actual book. And I'm hoping
Nice.
that me creating the book and me teaching people how to utilize my playbook, that will inspire folks who make the decisions at events to let me come on stage and teach people an IC perspective. Because I think so when we're talking about buy-in, I say this all the time. Like when it comes to buy-in at these events, companies I feel don't want to pay for their team to go because the IC, the individual contributor, me, they don't walk away with anything really. There's
Mm.
not like really true learning workshops. And so most of these events, it's meant for the leaders. They go and they learn how to be a better leader, how to manage better. They might learn new tools to bring back to their team to maybe test out, but the IC doesn't walk away with anything. So that's my point of my playbook. That's why I like to be on stage. So 2026, Heather's goal is to find more ways to get on stage and be an IC speaker. And
Let's
so
do
and
it.
represent the ICs in the room. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I love it. It's
Yeah.
so important. It's so important. Like one of the things that I took on tour over the summer to a few stages was like the roast of quality of hire. And like, yeah, quality of hire is something that like everybody talks about, but to the average IC recruiter, it's very confusing and it's not a recruiting metric. But because it has the word hire in it, you have these
Mhm.
like 4 to 6 year recruiters thinking like, oh, is this something I need to think about? Because this is what people are talking about. And this is what I see on this conference website. So it's like, I actually just read my audience, know who's in the attendance, and break it down and find a way to connect with them. So that's why I had a lot of fun just like talking shit about quality of hire and why it means nothing. Because then you get like 100 recruiters that are like, "Yeah, this is awesome. You're right." And it's very
Yeah.
fascinating, but it helps steer the thinking. And then I always bring it back to the controllables. Like, what are the fundamentals that make a great recruiter? And in my mind, it's like optimism, hard work, consistency, knowing your metrics, reverse engineering a funnel, working on executive presence and stakeholder management to become a talent advisor with your hiring manager, know what battles to pick, know what hills to die on, know your metrics inside and out, be able to communicate it to the CEO at the coffee station. Like, that's literally it.
Yeah. Well, you brought up a great point, and I tell you, is because at RecFest, we spoke on trust issues with hiring managers and how to fix it. And Anna Morgan dropped a great question at the start. She said, "In the audience, how many of you all are hiring managers?" We didn't have one hand go up. Our whole audience, and we had almost every seat filled, was IC folks, which was great. And then when I got to my turn and I got to speaking, because I talked about my 72-hour pipeline, like my playbook, my 72-hour, oh, I'm
Oh, I
sorry,
love that.
72-hour rule. That's what it's called. It's called my 72-hour rule. So I talked about that, but then I realized that that's really targeted towards agency. And so I asked the audience, how many of you all are agency recruiters? And only like 4 or 5 people raised their hand. So majority of our audience, not only were they not hiring managers and they were ICs, but they also were corporate recruiters. So then I had to like restructure to tell them how my playbook could still be utilized in a corporate setting, because I understand that the approach is different. Like I live in outbound world. I'm reactive in all I do. And so I also have to have a proactive, like I have to anyway. That's what the 72-hour rule is. And so actually my whole playbook. But anyway, to your point is that they ACs want to learn. They want to be in the audience. They need it. We need it. We need to be better. We want to be better. And a lot of this content out there, it's great, but it's not really made for us. It's not made for helping us be faster, better, smarter, like help improve our metrics. It's a lot of, just kind of, again, there's a lot of motivational and there's a lot of, but even at most of these events, and not to knock that, I mean, who pays to play are the vendors who have the
Yeah.
tools. But if they would even just kind of transition it on getting some like real IC information from it, like here's how our tool improved the IC, I think that would help. I don't know. We just need more education on how to really serve in this role. And I just feel like it's lacking in most event situations. So,
I agree. That's such a good point about the conference dynamics of paying to play and being on stages. Because here's the reality: if you're a recruiter and you're an IC and you're going to a conference, it's usually as a result of being a top performer. Conferences and a ticket and a weekend in Vegas is almost seen as like a motivational tool, and I think
mhm.
that's wrong. We need more budgets, especially coming from L&D, to send recruiters to conference so they can learn, so they can become better practitioners, because hiring is the most important function in the business. And from a career development perspective and like what companies do to invest in their employees' soft skills, I want to break this down. Think about the last conference you went to, especially if it was a big one. There's an expo hall, there's a booth, there's a bunch of marketers, there's a bunch of folks in t-shirts. Who are the people in t-shirts? Account executives and sales development reps. These are recruiting peers in the go-to-market organization. Their job is to be client facing. They are learning by being on the floor, representing the company, interacting with thousands of people, the soft skills that will grow their communication skills that deliver value to the company over time. Why are we not doing the same for IC recruiters, recruiting coordinators, sending them to these industry conferences so they too can do the same? Or if you are a vendor that sells B2B software, send your recruiting team to that event to support your go to market team for two reasons: A, development, and then B, you're tying impact to revenue. If you can say, like, yeah, I'm a recruiting coordinator, but I scanned somebody's badge at whatever conference and we got a qualified lead from it, let's comp out that recruiting coordinator the way we comp out an SDR for showing up hungover in Vegas in a wrinkly t-shirt. End
Yeah.
rant.
Yeah, it's so I just think because I did a poll. I've actually ran it a few times. Most companies no longer really paid to send us out. They don't.
No.
But why?
And that's why these
Because
conferences
there's
suck,
no
because there's no
ROI.
practitioners to talk to.
No, there's not. So, I mean, even if these events just did like side off workshops, like you got great people coming, great leaders in this space, have them if they want to speak on stage and do the high level, the leadership stuff, great. But also maybe incorporate some side workshops that if you're an IC and you're there, that you can go into this side workshop and get real learning experience. You can get your questions answered about how to be better in your role. Maybe there's someone there that you follow and you're like, I love your method, your approach. I would love to hear more about. I don't know. I just think there needs to be more of that. And that would encourage and give companies the approval to invite us to the show, to get us there. And so, I've had to build, that was my big thing is like, if I want to go, I had to build myself to get the access. So I used to pay to put myself there. Like, if my company didn't support it, I put myself there. I would come out of pocket. A lot of people won't do that. I've never understood that. Like, if you really wanna grow, there's a period where you pay. You pay to be like, you pay to grow. And so I've paid for coaching. I paid to be in events. It wasn't from my company. It was like knew that I wanted to be bigger than just a name on a HR docket that I worked at X company. I want to be bigger than that. And so I paid to show up. And so eventually that creates an ROI. But I wish you'd be surprised. I don't know about you, Brandon, but how many people I've told that I've come out of pocket, I use my own PTO, whatever, in order to support me to be able to be out. They're like, I'd never do that. And I'm like, what? I mean, there was a time when I would pay for like a tool. Like, I'll pay out of
Oh,
my own pocket for a tool before I can build a use case to get a company to
yes.
cover it.
It's so silly. It's so true. And the reality is most of these AI sourcing tools are less per month than the cost of a pair of Jordans. Like you can literally get an AI sourcing tool on a month to month contract for like $175. It's silly. Like just go out and do this stuff. But the reality is like a lot of recruiters are afraid to source. So you've got like a dynamic at play where recruiting sits in HR. HR BPs
Mhm.
and like HR managers have a lot of the power historically in that org. And they're
Yeah.
often like afraid to work a rec. That's why they hire recruiters in. Like, how many times have you talked to an HR person and they're like, oh, I don't want to work a rec. I don't want to cold call people. I don't want to sell somebody something. And it's
Right.
like, okay, cool. Then like I'll be happy to come in and take that kind of pressure and accountability to deliver value.
Ah, yeah.
All right, so Heather, you had a banger of a post. We're seeing this come back in vogue. It's the whole resume trick. I feel like there's this game of cat and mouse between recruiters and candidates that try to pull a fast one. We're living in a post-truth world. Integrity and honesty has deteriorated, and we see candidates do one of the oldest tricks of all time. Will you please enlighten us on your post and what candidates are doing to try and trick the ATS?
Yeah, so it was actually part of a discussion that I had, and it was about an individual was sharing that they, getting hundreds of resumes, and the problem is that whenever they go to utilize the ATS filter system, that people are putting in size one font in white color keywords So that way their resume would get pulled up. But then when they would go review it, they actually didn't have the skills for the role. And so it got me thinking about, people doing that and just kind of how like like how that affects the people who need to be at the top. And so it gave me a call to action to ATS systems. Again, I mainly do outbound. So like we have team members who go through the ATS here and that's their responsibility. I do my 72-hour rule. That's my thing. And so I'm mainly an outbound recruiter. And so with that, I'm like, well, why doesn't an ATS have it where we can set the parameters that it won't read any text below 10 font? Or that it won't read anything that's not, a black text. And
Mm.
so, of course, when you can't use just that structure on the color chart because creative resumes typically have, and when I say creative, I mean like graphic designers, UX, UI designers, folks, they typically will have color in their resumes. It's just they like to do that. And so, but we could at least have it set up where the ATS doesn't filter if it's below 10 font size and it's white. And so that will help protect us when we're filtering through our ATS. And someone actually dropped on my post about relevancy. When they filter through their ATS, they filter by relevancy. And so they wouldn't have that problem with the keywords. But then it got me thinking, I was like, well, that's a good thought. But then I got to thinking, well, what's relevancy then? Because wouldn't relevancy just be bulk keywords versus you doing an individual search of keywords? And so I was
Yeah,
like,
it's
right? It's the same. It's the
it's
same.
so
It's just,
fascinating, and it always comes down to this, like, recruiting and hiring is about trust, and
yeah.
there are a couple of schools of thought around inbound applicants in a requisition. One of them being that all of them are bad actors and you need to protect your data and the information of your candidates and your employees and your company. It is a like penetration vulnerability. So that's one school of thought.
Hmm.
I don't know if I'm that hardcore when it comes to inbound. Like I'm an outbound sourcer. Like I fill roles for people that I find. I've used
Yeah.
ATSs. I run ATS implementations. There's a time and a place for an ATS. There's also a time and a place for more recruitment branding
Yeah.
practices and campaigns so that you can drive inbound for maybe some of those folks that come in through word of mouth or are not a direct profile that has demographic information to enrich and reach out to. So there's a time and place for everything. But you raised this interesting point because like this is always one of those tricks that like people have thought will get them an interview. I like to assume that this is a very small percentage of
Hmm.
low integrity people that do not deserve to have that job or to work for that company if that is how they are choosing to misrepresent themselves or their skills. So that's
Yeah.
just like what I believe as a person is like we live in this
Yeah.
post-truth society and now there are like venture capital companies investing in like for example that company Cluely that helps people cheat. And it's like why are we perpetuating low integrity activities especially when it comes to something rooted in trust like getting hired to do a job. I think the kind of person that pulls one over on an ATS to beat the bot, which doesn't exist, that's not a thing, is somebody that you would not want working for your company from a like
Well,
first principles way of thinking.
yeah, I think you're creating a good point. So I typically lean into all things with grace. And the reason I do that is because I just remember when I didn't know anything. Like
Mhm.
when I got laid off and I was like, do I put my resume on Career Builder? If I wish I had that resume, how how embarrassing. I don't know where it is. If I ever find it, I'll post it because if people see like what my resume used to look like, I don't even know if I even wrote one, to be fair, because I landed in recruiting because of a referral. But aside from that, I think if people, let's say you get into the job market and you've been employed for 15 years at the same company, and you finally jump in, and what you hear is that this is the way to get seen, this is the way to get heard, this is the way to get a conversation. You might choose to do this, and that doesn't mean that you have bad intention or bad integrity, but it is a low integrity thing to take action on. And so I think in that case, I do try to give a little grace to try, even you could even if you had a conversation with them, ask like what made you choose to do this? I saw it on your resume. What made you choose to do it? See where the source came from. Maybe they had a resume coach. We all know there's some resume coaches out there that need to take the title down. And so maybe the resume coach said this is how maybe they don't even know. Could you imagine? I bet there are resume coaches out there who are doing that trickery in the resume because it improves their numbers and it guarantees them to get a call or at least a look at. I mean, they might not even know it happened if they paid someone to make it. And so,
Oh, that's true.
yeah,
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 that's an interesting, like, the deceit from the provider. Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that as, like, the bad actor being the, like, contemporary resume writer who touts, like, "Oh, I get X percent of my
right.
candidates into a job offer." And it's like, yeah, because 'cause you're, you know, doing this low
'Cause
integrity
yeah,
behavior.
you're doing low integrity. Yeah, they're doing lower integrity. I'm sure they are, right? And I hadn't even thought about that till this discussion, so I
I
need to
like
make
that,
a post
actually.
about it.
And there's some
Because it's
countermeasures being
probably
implemented.
true,
Oh,
right?
yeah, it's
And so
absolutely true. Like, if you're selling a
and that's why
$179 resume service or an
yeah,
$1,100 resume service, like,
why
you're doing shady stuff anyway, because why are you
yeah,
writing people's
if you're
resumes?
out there exactly. If you're out there scamming, they're probably doing that, and again, you're not as a like, you're not gonna notice it anyway. They're not you're not gonna
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah,
How many
yeah.
people are out there doing that on their, and they run it to a ATS scanner, and I bet it ranks up super high, right? And so, they're just not gonna catch it. So I always try to lean in with, grace and just try to, understand the point of conflict, in that case, and maybe it was intentional. And then I educate, like, hey, look, from this point forward, highly recommend not doing it because it does lower the integrity bias. It creates an integrity bias, whether it's intentional or not. And you don't want that. Going into a job opportunity because then that could be part of what doesn't get you the opportunity. But the other side of it, and this is the part that is really just challenging for me to understand why anyone would choose to do this, is because you still have to eventually interact with something. And the only reason I say
Yeah.
something is because AI interviews are showing up. And so at some point, you will have to speak to what you do. And if your resume is not reflecting what you can actually provide, it's going to be funneled out anyway. And you're
Yeah,
wasting
exactly.
time. And it's
Wasting
not
your own
even just
time.
right, your own time. And that's exhausting. I'm sorry, but if you end up in 15, 20 interviews and you get nowhere because you're falsifying information and then they're vetting it out, you're going to get fatigued way
Oh,
more
yeah,
than
it's
I will,
silly.
And so, yeah, but it's an interesting world. It goes back to you and I were in discussion. I was talking about templates. So one thing I'm teaching anyone that has an introduction call with me, if I can, is that we need to change the way we see templates today. So templates
Mhm.
were written before AI, and now everyone's resume looks the same. And at one point that used to be nice. That used to be a nice structure. But now in today's world, your resume looking identical as everyone else's doesn't help you stand out at all. And the information oftentimes is not written, it's written very templated. And so it sounds like everyone else's. So one thing I encourage people to do, and everyone can do this, I think I pay for the $20 a month ChatGPT. If it requires you to pay to use this, I think it might require for voice text on there. Pay $20 one time. That's better than paying $400 to a resume writer.
Uh,
And my point is go in there and have a list of questions that a recruiter would ask you, or even not. Like, just what would you say to your friend about what you do professionally, where you started, how you got there, and then tell ChatGPT to write that in bullet point format. You would say it way better than some template that you're trying to copy and mirror, and it's not going to sound like you at all. So
I
it's like, just go do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip, like, using ChatGPT to prompt you. Like, we're using
Prompt.
ChatGPT the wrong way. Like, if you can't
Yes.
sit down for an hour with your noise-canceling headphones on and your favorite beverage and reflect on what you have done to deliver value to a company for the last 5 years, break it down quarter by quarter, bring yourself back. What did I do Q2 of 2019? Where was I sitting? Who did I work with? Like, it's really that simple. If you can't put that
Yes.
together in a sentence, how are you going to do the job you're interviewing to do anyway? Like, work is hard. It's only going to get harder. Work was pretty easy the last few
Mhm.
years. We got paid a lot of money to do our jobs. Now, work is going to get harder because our perception, when comp drops, when there are fewer opportunities for advancement, the work levels stay the same or increase because demands
Mhm.
continue to grow. But when we're reciprocated with similar or lower compensation, work feels harder. So work's gonna feel hard. And I think the people differentiating themselves now are not folks that struggle to communicate the impact they've had in a
Mhm.
business. It's just,
Yes.
it is what it is.
But there are people, a lot of people who do struggle. So like you said, spend an hour. doing an audio of yourself. And the other nice thing you can do too is you can use that same voice option on chat. Like pull up interview questions, answer them, and then tell chat how close is does this sound like it's in star alignment, like the star format? It'll
Yeah.
give you a better way to say it. You can improve yourself so when you show up to these interviews, you can convey in an even more confident way what you would already say to begin with, but maybe you just haven't had an opportunity in 15 years to speak about your work in the way that interviews expect it to be spoken. And so I don't I'm just in this season that everything that was written before because of AI, we have to rewrite it, and we have to rewrite it because of AI. And how do we look different outside? So that way you don't mirror everyone. We're in a position everyone's mirroring everyone. And so all my job is as a recruiter is to pull what the resume doesn't say. All I advise people is you can do that yourself. So
Yeah.
you can do that by speaking about what you do into ChatGPT, tell it to reorganize it in bullet point structure, and then if you really want to edit it to a job description, literally paste the description in there and just say reorganize this based on the interest of this role. That's it. It doesn't change it, just reorganizes it based on what the hiring manager is interested in reading. I'm
And you bring up a good point about the resume format itself. So let's actually talk about that. You mentioned STAR, which is situation, task, action, results. That's like a behavioral interview structure for how do
Mhm,
you answer a question? Tell me about a time when blah, blah, blah. A lot of folks bring the STAR method into their resume format. The other popular resume format is the XYZ, popularized by Laszlo Bach at Google during the twins when Google was the hottest place to work and they were fielding, tens of thousand applications a week. They needed to do something to A, help their recruiters scan resumes more efficiently. So instead of
mhm,
spending 5 minutes per resume, they needed to figure out a structure and a way for recruiters to be able to scan a resume in 30 to 90, maybe 120 seconds for the volume, since this is like pre AI. And
mhm,
then they educated the market. They went on PR campaigns to tell people, like, hey, this is how you structure a resume. This is why you see all this, like, ex Google says blah, 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 ex Google recruiter doing yada, yada. Like, it's all PR going back to what Laszlo did when he trained the market for the results he needed for his recruiters to manage operational expense and tie his work as a chief human resources officer to the language of the business, which is operating expense. So when we think about how we hire today, AI is changing our recruiting processes. We don't need to slap AI onto our existing processes. We need to rework the entire process because the
mhm.
current process kind of sucks. It sucks for
Yeah.
recruiters, it sucks for hiring managers, it sucks for candidates. Like, let's just clean slate it and do something new. So I'm excited about the use cases for AI because AI is really good with words. AI is really good with transcripts. Let's have people in a job talk about what their job is like to an agent, describe their daily tasks, the challenges, their output, some of the business outcomes. And then let's go have a bunch of candidates talk to an agent about their career history. 45 minutes, an hour with an agent could be 15 or 20 pages on a resume. But imagine if you had that context way higher in the funnel before you get to a recruiter or a hiring manager for a first or second round interview. We've already filtered more alignment. So that's like the one use case for changing the process that I think could be huge for AI. Uh, and it starts with destroying the resume altogether.
Well, you bring up an interesting point I hadn't thought of is like I think companies are thinking of it's back to I'm not a huge fan of AI interviews. I love what they provide. Like I love the fact that it can gain more insight versus what like the human brain is able to consume. And so from the receiving end, I see the value from the employer side. From the other side of it, the candidate, I just couldn't imagine like, having let's say every job you apply to, you get an AI interview. Could you imagine doing 120 of those and then you never get a call back? Like how exhausting. So what you're
And this
making
is
me
at the
think of
platform level.
though,
You have like a standardized version. Like if
yeah,
you
but
got an invite, be like, tell me about your entire career and sit down for 2 hours and do it. And
yeah,
you had a series of very in depth prompts. And then you could have a universal agent of your like yourself to go
I
to
was
market with.
just I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that. I was going to say, you know what would work? Instead of the employer all having the AI interview, why don't we have our own little AI thing that we program that we do this with, and we just hand that to you, the employer, and then you, based on that, determine if we're a right fit. Then we're not repeating what we've already done. And so
Wait, wait, wait.
we're go
Let's talk
uh,
about repeating what we've already done. When it comes to innovation in the vendor ecosystem, it
mhm,
always stems from candidate behavior. If I'm a recruiting manager at a company and I don't have enough applications in my requisition because I'm using an ATS that's not mobile optimized and people apply from their phones, I'm going to get more applications if I get a mobile optimized ATS. We did this. We did this 10 years ago when people had their iPhone 2s or whatever and they were applying to jobs from their phone. That's a real
yeah,
digital transformation case study. I did it. I'm sure you did it. I'm sure other people did it. So the same goes for this use case for AI. Like, who is the vendor that's going to build this awesome work product that is going to be so pattern disruptive? We see it all
yeah,
the time. Like, remember 2 years ago when people did TikTok resumes? And
yeah,
recruiting leaders and recruiters and the recruiting world lost their goddamn mind because they were like, oh my God, it's a visual resume. This is the next big thing. It's like, yeah, just do something different. Like enable candidates in a way that can position them. That's truly helping.
yeah.
Unemployment has flattened. Job trends are back to like pre pandemic levels. You've talked a little bit about this, but people bring a lot of hyperbole into what's going on from the labor market. We're
Yeah.
actually just in a recalibration. You've talked a little bit about that. So I think if a vendor really wants to meet this moment where people have this sense that this is the worst time ever to get a job, they would build this for them. But why don't you talk
Yes.
about labor market and your thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but I had commented on a post about that. During the dot com, let's say, or even was it the '08? Was it '08 crash? I see
Yep.
that's
Great
how much I
recession.
don't know. Yeah, so in '08, I didn't even own a home yet, like just those periods of life, I just wasn't in dot com for sure, but I wasn't present, like, intellectually to understand the influence and impact of that time. I probably could go back and read on it. I just haven't, to be fair, but so when I my observability is literally since 2008 is really because I was at a job for 11 years. I literally thought I was just gonna work there my whole life. I didn't really do a lot of expansive thinking, and so most of my time now has been since, the end of '08 watching and observing the market and its patterns and, like, how things work, especially being on agency side. I get a completely different view because I work with so many clients, and so I see how, like, inside the ecosystem of the organizational shifts and changes, like what that looks like when those things happen, because that determines our periods of success as well. And so, but to your point, is that, I think right now we're in a market situation where everyone assumes that there's less because of AI. The market was pivoting downward before AI was released to the public. And so because we were already in a situation, the what goes up must come down. Well, that happened. So 2020, that surge that came following that, all these companies, and I can't remember the person who wrote the article specifically. Like if I saw the profile, and I don't know if you'll recognize it, but it was a woman who worked, I believe, I want to say it was at Microsoft, but I could even be wrong there. But let's just say theoretically she was at Microsoft. I know it's a woman. She released an article that they hired her simply because they wanted to steal her away from the competitor, and they just sat her. She did nothing during that period, and then so she doesn't work there anymore. She released an article about it, but I saw more of that. Like I had friends who joined like bigger organizations, and they literally had nothing to do. They were just a seat in a person sitting in a seat with like minimum task. And so
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
what we saw yeah, so what we saw coming out of, going into 23 into 24 is companies were doing away with that. They were cleansing. They were cleansing then, and it wasn't because of AI. It was because they overstaffed based on what they thought growth was going to happen from 2021 to 2022, and that's where we saw inflated compensations. That's when we saw all that piece. So anyway, what goes up must come down. I do the same observation with like the housing market. I'm still surprised, and I know it's a separate discussion, that housing hasn't gone down drastically outside of its inflation to normalization. And I expect we're going to see the same thing. I did expect that when the chip shortage with cars was going to turn around, that we would see the same, like, because we were in such a shortage, that we would see an unprecedented amount of 0% APRs, lowest it's ever been. That hasn't happened yet, but I still have theories that if that we're potentially going to do that wave soon too. But anyway, back to the hiring piece of it is that we're naturally in a flow of a decline anyway. And I think AI has just made it a little messy, and it's given people a reason to say like why it's not working, why they're struggling. And I'm not discounting that people aren't struggling. People were struggling before AI launched. And so I think we're just, like I said, everything's changing. The landscape of how to find a job, how to find talent, how we show up, it's all, I think we're just all confused about what to do because it's still, we're, nothing's landed yet. Like, ex- storm, it hasn't calmed. So
Yeah.
I'm
And why is
thinking,
because people want things to be easy. Like people want work to be easy. They want to make $100,000 a year at home in their slippers, doing customer support tickets at a B2B software company with 2 years experience from their luxury apartment, like drinking $10 lattes, $30 salads. Like that's just the lifestyle, this ultra premium lifestyle young people have lived because we saw a bull market for 13 years. And
mhm,
now, like, the world is bigger than headlines. The world is bigger than our perception. The reality is, like, there are tons of great jobs in my community that people aren't
mhm.
willing to do. And they include sign on bonuses, apprenticeship programs, training programs. We do not reward entrepreneurship in
Mhm.
other sectors outside of tech the way we should.
Well, and I think the inflation, well, I guess I see there's there's the side where, like you said, people are wanting to sit at home and, in their loungewear, make 100K, drink a latte. And then I think there's just the inflation of life in general is that those jobs that are down the street, that people don't want to do. I mean, they don't you used to be able to work that job and have a decent living. And I think it's the chase in order to own the once $90,000 home that's now, 210,000. So if you want to have the actual that lifestyle where you own a home and you have a decent car, not even like the best car, but like something that isn't going to break down every 6 months, it does require you to have more income. And I don't know what we're still, so I don't give a lot of opinion on this because I just saw a release the other day, and I don't know how I didn't, this is something you and I were talking about. So, and I'll lead with this. So before I give what I'm going to say is that my sister used to be military, Air Force for 22 years. And when we would have disruption, I would always reach out to find out, like, should I prepare? What should I do? What's going on? And and so one day I finally asked her, because I used to watch, I don't watch the news anymore. If I do watch it, I just watch it in the beginning for the local, and then I turn it off. And so it's because I asked her one day, how do I know like what to trust? And she said, unless you're willing to do the research yourself, she's like, don't watch anything. And so I just don't. And so now I'm in a point of life where I'm in observation mode and I sit back and I watch and then I formulate an opinion based on what actually happens. And so right now, the other day, I came across a post where it was about Elon Musk is releasing these like tiny homes. And so I know it's not new theory. Like it's not a
For
new
his
thing.
kids?
No, like if I find it, Brandon, I
That's a
gotta say
joke.
it was. But do you know the movie? It reminded me of the movie Wally. You know how like
Oh,
everyone's
yeah.
like, that's
Sounds
what this
depressing.
remind. It is, and I was like, because I think, look at the housing market. What's the best way to get people to buy these tiny homes and to live these tiny lifestyles? Is make it so unaffordable that we can't purchase the big home. And then we become accustomed to living in the small. I mean, to take the which by the way, I wanna do the van life for a year where I travel and, like, live in a van. I would love that. But if you get accustomed to that, then you get accustomed to the tiny home. And so, I don't know. So, I'm literally, like, for the next 5 years, am sitting back and watching how AI is gonna disrupt not just our careers, but, like, our lifestyles in general, because I think there's a lot happening that we're not prepared for, and I think it's in response to AI and the jobs and just so with every industrial shift, there's been big changes, and
Yeah.
we're just seeing very, small changes right now. There's a big shift coming, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know if I want it. If it's the tiny home, I'm telling you, it reminded me of the movie. If that's it, I mean, I just feel like it. I just don't want that life.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I agree.
so with that. the creativity and the lifestyle back then, like the cars, right? All None of the cars looked really identical, the people, the clothing. And so I just don't want to live in a world where it's just it's one color, you know? Like I love the creativity. I love the uniqueness. And so that's my fear with all this like technology is it's very clean and it's very
Yeah.
plain. And I don't want us to be in a world that lacks the art. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think like what you're describing is stuff that we've seen in the media that gave us warnings about these theories 20 years ago, maybe 25, 30 years ago. Like I'm thinking like Jim Carrey and the Truman Show, Pleasantville, like all of these representations of homogeneity and sameness. And I think what's going to happen as we do more AI slop in this deterioration of culture is I'm optimistic for a return to humanity,
Mhm.
return to the arts, a return to connection, because like the AI art already that we see is so bad that I think at some point humans will just be like, enough is enough. Like, I want to see real art. I want to see real music. I want to have real conversation. And maybe that'll bring us
Yeah,
back to a new society, depending on the jobs
yeah.
that are available to us and what the state of the economy looks like.
I agree with you there. I think there's a reset to that emotion. I think that's why in-person events are mattering because living in the remote state, I'm remote, you're remote. We crave energy interaction. It matters. We're seeing a lot of increase in homestead living, people wanting to take ownership of what they intake in with their health. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, that's why, like I said, I'm just an observation because with this technology improvement, and then also there's this huge movement of kind of not letting technology control, what we do. It'll be interesting. What will the world look like in 5 years? I mean, just that close in five. I mean, it's just crazy. Just living in times where like you literally will blink and something else is out, something new. It's like,
So
I
I got a
can't keep up.
Slack.
Go
I
ahead.
got a Slack in real time while we were talking about this today from an AI tech founder, and they said, "This go back to resumes and like resume standardization and what is the future of the resume?" And they said to me unprompted, "My philosophy is that everyone is willing to write their resumes with AI. Why don't I just do it for the entire population instead?" How cool is that?
What? I'm telling you, what are the odds? It's so true though. It's like when you saying that, well, we were there, right? Whoever that is, they got to include us in. We said it here first, but seriously,
Yeah,
I
let
think
Heather get a cut.
there you go. It's Brandon too. And so I think the problem, and this is what this is for though. This is what all this creativity and like coming out with new tools. It's like we're solving the problem on the wrong end. And so the whole focus has been solving it for the organization getting 100 resumes, but we're not thinking about the individual. And that's why I've been against AI interviews is because we're not thinking about the fatigue on the other side.
Mm.
For the company, it's one interview. For the individual, it could be number 80. And so how do we remove that fatigue on the other side? The solution.
Yeah, and it's like it's so true. We did this with one-way video interviewing where there's a cost benefit analysis and there's two sides that I see. It's yes, fatigue and it's two sides. It's like employer convenience, but then employee candidate fatigue. The reality
Uh-huh.
is like one-way video interviews empowered candidates to not lie about taking a day off work to their boss, not missing a day of wages or burning a day of PTO to go to a physical office and interview for a job. One-way video interviews allowed them to do it in their own time. And the way you establish the parameters on those platforms is like you can tell a candidate they get one, two, or three, or unlimited retakes. And I've taken
Uh-huh.
those interviews. I've gotten a job because of a one-way interview. And this was before Zoom. And it was like my first remote job and it was my first tech job. And I remember like setting up the backdrop. I was like, oh, I'm going to make this look like an office, make it look professional. The reality is like my
Yeah.
computer was resting on like a laundry basket.
You're
And I
awesome.
think we saw over time, like employers were able to review applications faster. You could listen to like those screening questions at 2x speed. I don't think it's that egregious because now what we're seeing recruiting teams do is inject more friction into the
Uh-huh.
application process. So if you're working at a company that has a smoking hot employer brand, those recruiting teams are trying to get as much friction at the top of the funnel as they can to slow down the faucet. So what do? They take a bunch of behavioral interview questions, throw them into open text field, knock out job application questions, and then they
Mhm.
review those interview questions that are application questions that could just be verbal. So we're already doing things in interesting ways to inject more friction to stop that flow of easy apply applicants, bad actors, candidates who aren't taking the time to apply intentionally. I think it comes back to like if you're intentional about a job, like you'll be willing to do what the company asks you to do. That's not always the right and best way to hire, but ultimately, historically, getting a job is like, oh, candidates will do whatever the company says for them to do. And if they tolerate it, they might earn an offer.
Yeah, that always drives me nuts because again, like you said, in your like even in your case, you might have done one, a handful, but if I think of this on scale. So on scale, and especially in an AI world where and not even I don't even say AI, and the fact that we have access to so many opportunities. Like you and I can literally go on LinkedIn, go on Indeed and find jobs instantly. And if we wanted to go the slow route, which is a whole nother process, you can find even more jobs because not everybody posted job boards. But my point is that instantly you and I can apply to 50 roles in a week. And so with that, if every single one of those roles to qualify you in 50 sent you a message and said, we want you to do this. I don't know how long was your video interview? Is it
I can't
15
remember.
minutes, 30
No, I
minutes?
remember that this was like 7 or 8 years ago, and it might have been like
Okay.
5 questions, just random, like,
Real
just those
fast.
5, like, first knockout style questions. They could have been
Yeah.
asynchronous, they could have been just, like, text fields,
Yeah.
but they chose to,
But let's
like, have me represent how I communicate, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's say like 15 minutes, um, give or take. I think that's probably a good fair amount. But and no retakes. So let's say you did 50. That's 100 or 700. So I mean it'd be 12 for a week, 12 and a half hours of your time if you did them all in a week, not that you would, but I'm just saying it's 12 and a half hours of someone's time. And so even though even a small amount, that doesn't sound like a lot because we work 40 hours a week. But and you and I do these like if you're a recruiter, you're that's just us showing up. That's just a job, like we do these 30 minutes all day long. But my point is that to not hear anything back, I just think we're not thinking about the mental strain that has on the human. And so from the employer side, it's a great value add. And what I love about it, here, I will give something that I do love. Company like Microsoft, huge. Company like Amazon, huge. They have way more than one job opening that fits you. And so these type of interviews, these AI driven video interviews can actually make, like if they ran that through, it could actually list you for a bunch of jobs that you qualify for. How
Mhm.
blessing is that? Now that's a blessing, really.
Yep.
Instead of you having to find the jobs and hope that you apply or hope you talk to someone, hope they recognize that you fit somewhere else, like it can do that for you. Great.
And
I support it there.
huge, huge shout out to somebody that I wanna call out. Her name is Elaine Orler. Elaine
Okay.
has been around this
Shout out
industry.
Elaine.
Shout out Elaine. Do you know Elaine?
I don't. I'm just shouting her out.
Okay, just shouting her
I
out.
don't
So
know.
Elaine started the Candy Awards for
Oh,
candidate experience. That was like 15, 13 years ago. She is like a chief product officer. She's building a product right now called Match 2, ATCH number 2.
check it out.
This is one of the most passionate people in our space about candidate experience. And she is building that software exactly for enterprise level companies so that if you, Heather, a senior technical recruiter, apply to one technical recruiter opening through a Workday ATS at, say, Fortune 100 company, your information is surfaced for the other 100 senior technical recruiter recs that are posted within a certain amount of time, whether it's, 2 days or 2 years. And I think that is real product making a difference for candidates. So shout out to Elaine.
Yes. I love that because you brought up a good point, and that's been kind of my case with this is the candidate experience of these technologies is how are we why I understand we're solving the company problem, but how are we helping the candidate experience? And so we think we're helping the candidate experience by getting them qualified in, but if the video doesn't open up more opportunities, if we're not going to provide at least provide feedback, like how great would that be if you actually got like you could literally program it to do an HR compliant feedback loop. Literally.
Yes,
Like how do that? Then I'll be fine. I'll be fine with it cuz who wouldn't want to do it? What if you got HR compliant feedback? Like you would do every video. Help me
100%.
understand how I can, why this didn't fit or how I could show up better, whatever that may be. And so that was my take. I think it was Humanly that was at breakfast, and that's all I asked of their product team. I said, if as long as we're thinking of the candidate, and so we can solve the company problem, but how are we serving them? And we serve them by HR compliant feedback, providing that.
Mhm.
And that can be programmed in. Because that's been the
Mhm.
whole issue on the recruiter side is that recruiters, we don't go through HR training. At least I didn't. I don't know if you did. I've never been through HR training. And so, we're not equipped, a lot of us, on the HR compliance side. And so, I've had to learn through my own interest in researching. But the point is that they don't have us give feedback because it potentially lacks HR compliant regulations. And so they can embed that into the tools.
I love that. Heather, what advice for recruiters out there? They
So I heard a statement. This is actually what changed really was the original drive. When I first got into mindset development learning, really honing into my passion in life, which is running that youth sports fundamental program on mental health and neuroperformance. My number one listen to was Jim Rohn. And he said, in order to increase your compensation, you have to increase your value to the marketplace. And that's in all things. So if you want to end up again on stages to speak, if you want to get invited to the table, it's a value, and that's just the way it is. Like people want to learn from you. And so if I had to give any advice, and I do this forever, is focus on learning as much as you can, creating a value within yourself that it gets people curious about you. And so that curiosity about you is what's going to invite opportunity to you that you didn't sign up for. And that's not just if maybe you don't want to get on stages, that's job opportunities. Like that, people knowing you for a value that you bring because you created a curiosity in them to learn about you is what's going to open up doors for you in all things. And so spend your time building value within yourself, and that comes down to knowledge, because really that's all we're all doing here is just knowledge exchange. I mean,
I love it.
that's all we're doing. So can exchange knowledge. And it goes back to, sorry, one more note. I'm naturally an introvert. I know it's crazy, but and I say introvert because my batteries recharge from isolation. That's where my introversion comes in. And I still get nervous in a crowd of people to start to engage. And how you deflate that nervousness is you become informed about what they're going to talk about. And so most of us think, I can't, in a room of crowded people, I can't talk. But if it was a room of crowded people that was talking about stuff that you already know and that you already are really passionate about, you have no issue saying something. We all, in a moment of passion, like something we're passionate about, can have a conversation. So if you're in a room and you simply want to be part of the engagement, you just have to know what the room's going to talk about ahead of time and become educated in it. So
I love it.
yeah.
Heather, how can people stay up to date on what you're up to?
Yeah, just follow me on LinkedIn. Heather Colvin with the baseball emoji beside it. I used to be Heather Colvin with the bubbles. I don't know if you and I were connected back when I had the bubble letters. Yeah, so I had Heather in bubble letters. At one point, LinkedIn would allow you to see and you can still do it, customized font. You have to paste it in from a separate tool. Quick note for people: LinkedIn does not recognize customized font. So when
Correct.
you put it in your content, not recognized. When you put it in your
Correct.
name, yeah. So if you use customized font in your name, people can't find you because it
Correct.
doesn't read it. And so anyway,
Nor is it cached or indexed in Google search. Like if you have special characters,
mhm.
that is not indexed.
Yeah, so I just advise if you're wanting to create a presence, don't use it because you do become hidden with it. So, but with that, so I got rid of the bubbles. I used to have Heather Colvin in bubbles, and then I had my name, so then you could still find me. But the bubbles stopped being able to be seen via mobile. And so I then, to make myself look different, in order to, when I comment, that it creates a pattern disruptor, I use the baseball emoji. So if you want to find me, Heather Colvin, baseball emoji. I am on X though. I do love to hang out on X, and I hang out in X Spaces. So I'm talk recruiting on X. Same picture on LinkedIn as on X if you want to come find me there.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Brandon.